The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We're back. Canna Chat in the Zone. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I have a returning guest, two-time returning guest, and a good guy, a good buddy. Dan Rush, how are you?
I'm good, Ralph. I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm not doing too badly. You know, I'm an old man in a small town, so you take everything into consideration. It's been a good journey for me thus far, and we were talking about journeys off the air. You're about to partake in one, and I'm just hoping that your headset has adjusted and you're getting ready for your journey, uncomfortable as it is.
Yeah, so, nobody wants to go to prison at the age of 58, but and I'm about to become a citizen of the city of San Pedro, which is in Southern California. I'm heading to Terminal Island first, which is a penitentiary in LA County off the coast of San Pedro. It's kind of a diverse place. It's got all different levels of security. And I've just recently discovered, I'm going to leave his name out of it, but a friend, a Congress member, and congressional offices communicate with the Bureau of Prisons as part of their business. So I've just discovered that I'm being sent to Terminal Island initially because they want to do a medical evaluation on me, an extensive one. So that's kind of good news because I had been hoping that I was going to go to Sheridan Satellite Camp, which is the lowest security level. It's kind of like a farm or a ranch. In Oregon. It's closest to my house, so my family could come see me, and there's more resources there. There's better library, better internet, better telephones. So I was kind of upset when I found out I was going to Terminal Island, but a Congress member friend who's stayed loyal has been communicating with the Bureau of Prisons, and so we discovered that they're sending me there for a medical evaluation. And then hopefully I'm going to be sent from there up to Sheridan.
Oh, very nice. That is very nice. So in a sense, they're covering their own asses with you, health-wise, and in turn doing something that can end up benefiting you. And I like that. So at least your family is going to be able to see you on a regular basis, and I don't know if that's a scheduled visit, if it's a drop-in thing. I don't know if you know yet how that works.
In the satellite camps, so I come from a community that has fought the government regularly for decades, and so we have friends that are in federal prisons, and so I've been getting a lot of good information from inside, from families on the outside. Families on the outside have a lot of information about how to deal with the institution from the outside, and then convicts inside have a lot of information about how to maneuver the system from the inside. So I'm kind of getting the whole pie of information. And so the visiting stuff probably won't be it won't be glamorous in Treasure Island. Family folks will be able to come see me. We'll sit in a room at a table with correctional officers there observing us. In the farm setting, I think it's even a little more casual. Outside, picnic tables, not such an imposing presence of correctional officers. So, yeah, I mean, people, and anybody that wants to come visit me can come visit me, and I'll be there and glad to see friends and supporters and my members in the cannabis industry, anybody.
Good. You know, I'm really glad we're touching bases because last time we talked, you had just found out about this change in venue, if you will, and you were much more apprehensive. Knowledge is power, and the more knowledge you get, the more powerful one becomes. And I'm glad you're making use of your network of people and friends who have helped you and supported you, and whom you have helped and supported along the way. That stuff doesn't just materialize. So, nice warm feeling for you, Dan.
I gotta tell you, Ralph. You know, I see the stuff that's written and in the media, and it's, you know, I mean, it's disheartening. It can make you angry. It can. I've been depressed over it. I've been angry over it. I've been concerned over it. But the thing I've found in the last little over 2 years now is I actually have more people that are supporters that communicate with me. And it turns out they've been supporters all along. And I've got more that communicate directly with me now than I did before. And I just see so many people that, you know, when you look at the lies and the bullshit that the government said about me in the case and got into the record, it's hard to believe that people would even talk to you anymore, let alone cherish you or support you or, you know, adore you. And I've got people that I adore, and it's a good feeling. You know, there's a relief that comes. You spend your life trying to be a good guy, trying to make people like you, trying to be productive and a contributor. And you go to bed at night, you go, gosh, you know, what if somebody ever said this, or what if somebody ever said that? And man, I've had every nightmare example of stupid, mean, horrible things put out about me nationally, in national media. And what it's done is it's freeing. It's like, you know, I laugh at it now because I got hundreds of people that communicate with me directly currently, thousands that write in different, you know, Facebooks and Instagrams, social media that I had to learn how to use because I had staff that did it before, so I didn't know how to do it. And it's like if I have who and what I have, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, I know what it was like to not have that kind of support before and to live in that fear. And now I know what it's like to have this support, and it's growing. It's daily. So
nice.
It's remarkable. And now I was reading an article yesterday that somebody wrote, and it was disparaging. It was ugly. And there were comments below, oh yeah, that damn union, and there's proof that this union is bad, and they've got these criminal, racketeering, horrible guys trying to use the cannabis movement and patients for my own personal gain, and it's, you know, so it gives them a voice. But frankly, I look at that stuff and I roll on the floor laughing now.
Yeah.
So,
well, Dan, could you give us an update on to what is happening? I mean, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, it's going to be legal in the state of California. It's legal in Oregon. It's legal in Washington. Can you give us an update? I understand there are 3 unions that will be assuming what you were doing, basically, with one union and representing the growers, the cultivators, the sellers, the stores, and what have you, the workers in the retail part of it, and there's another union for the transportation of it. And could you kind of clarify, simplify for just someone looking in from the outside who've, and we could talk about the advantages of a consumer to legalization and what have you. But from the standpoint of a union, can you give us an update on what's happening?
Okay, well, let me answer the first part of your question first, which is don't blame me. The only part of Proposition 64 that I had anything to do with in the architecture of was creating the agency, merging the two agencies, creating the new marijuana enforcement agency, which is really just a hybrid extension of the medical marijuana, the Division of Medical Marijuana in the Department of Consumer Affairs. And that was always the thing I focused on in the policy that we wrote, that we contributed to the process. And when the feds indicted me, I was out of the picture, and Sean Parker and Silicon Valley came in and gave us what we have today. So don't blame me.
I wasn't blaming you. I was just, you were in on it from the beginning, and I want to know what it's evolved to since you left from your standpoint. And
I wanted to say that for your listeners that are throwing darts at my picture on the dispensary.
Oh, no. And I just want to tell you the only picture worth throwing darts at is with you in that black shirt and the white tie. As anybody, I wish I were your wardrobe manager back then. You that's the picture that shows up. How many times you probably never wore that outfit?
I was on my way to a black and white fundraiser that I was putting on in San Francisco for Instituto Laboral de la Raza, and it was the first year that we had done a black and white ball. And that fucking picture, that picture has. Sorry, Ralph. That picture has.
I could live with that. My tender ears will adjust.
That picture has haunted me in every negative stereotype newspaper article. The union guy, whatever you want to call union guys in the.
You look like you were well connected with the guy who was well connected.
I was well connected with a guy that had a horrible selection of suits and ties, which was me.
That's right. Okay.
I was
so at least you only have yourself to blame about it. But I'm sure that didn't look good for you all the way along the line. And just that you can smile and laugh about it now, because I know that's not the Dan. I know that's not the Dan Rush that you would have preferred to get out there if you'd have thought it. And it wasn't, you weren't thinking, oh, this picture's going to, someday, this picture's, it's the way it goes. But I would have preferred to see you in a flannel shirt with your sleeves half rolled up and a cigarette coming out of your jaw and a beer in one hand. Well, no, not anymore, but maybe
mineral water.
Mineral water. That's good. That's good. By the way. So
yeah, Ralph. Everybody that knows me, I was a national director in the largest private sector union in North America and founder of the cannabis division. But I had 3 suits, and everybody knows I wear my North Oakland communist tuxedo every day. It's Carhartt jeans, the fireproof ones, because frankly I have no butt, and they make me look like I have a butt. And my Ben Davis shirts. and everything's got a union label on it. My New Balance sneakers all are made in America and by UFCW members in New Jersey. I just, I'm not a suit guy, and I ended up going to a black and white ball. So anyway, I think we about killed that. Let me.
All right. So give me an update on what's happening with, today, and then after that, we'll talk about something that you posted on Facebook as a warning to all consumers, and I think we should pass that on to the listening audience. So first the union.
So what we're seeing now, in 2011, I knew that to create a dignified industry, we would have to do dignified things. So when we set out to do policy, we stopped having Herb Jones, the pot grower, stand and testify before the legislature, and rather we put Shaquille Martin, who spoke about being a cannabis cultivator. And we had folks get up and talk about being production facilities and production workers and working in processing. And we stopped calling people trimmers, and we started calling them harvesters. And so we built this whole apprenticeship program, which is now the first cannabis apprenticeship program in the history of the planet. And that it's approved by the Department of Industrial Relations. It's been signed by the governor, Jerry Brown. And so that brought some legitimacy, training, certification requirements to workers in the industry, which helps the industry. It dignifies us. And it also spelled out the different jurisdictions that different unions would represent. Like, we didn't put in there, I wanted UFCW to organize it wall to wall. One union, one strong voice. You know, we would come and kick the door in when it came time for contract negotiations and getting things for our members. Instead of three unions fighting over who was going to get what, more than they were fighting over what the workers were going to get, or our members were going to get. But the apprenticeship program kind of paved the way to other unions. So you've got transportation, and the historical union for that is the Teamsters. UFCW and the Teamsters have been fighting over agricultural work since I was a young Teamster organizer back in the 70s and 80s, and we were in the fields fighting over who was going to get the field work. Was it the UFW and the Chavistas? Would it be the Teamsters, who historically represented the braceros, the immigrant workers? Or would it be what is now the agriculture division of UFCW, but started off as the fruit and vegetable pickers? And that was myself and Roy Mendoza and Pete Montereno, who were young organizers. We went out and organized people, and then brought everybody into UFCW 10 years later. So now you've got the Agriculture Department of California is a regulatory agency over ag in cannabis, and so that brings in UFCW, brings in Teamsters, the United Farm Workers, and then you've got a medical component, and a lot of people don't know there's been a huge medical division of the International Longshore Harbor Workers, the ILWU, on the West Coast has had a huge medical component. And so when we start talking about cannabis pharmacy technicians and certifications, well, the ILWU is a natural union for that. And now we even see SEIU coming in and wanting to organize the social workers, the people that are providing the ancillary benefits that dispensaries provide.
Dan, I'm sure the people out there can see the possibility that the government came at you as a divide and conquer thing. It wasn't about your guilt or did you do this or did you do that. It was simply a matter of dividing up the pie and having you guys, instead of going forward, you have to fight each other first and then fight for the working person. And I think that's a conspiracy. You can make a case that that could be a possible conspiracy on the government's part. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes total sense, Ralph. But the reality of my indictment was a 7-year revenge declaration on the part of Melinda Hague, the U.S. Attorney in the Northern District. And I'll tell you the timeline that happened. Hague and I started fighting in 2011. She was screaming about reefer madness and the Justice Department was going to shut it down. I was running around the country talking about control, tax, regulate, create jobs, infrastructure, public safety and health, tax revenues. My rhetoric won. My campaign won. It began the end of cannabis prohibition. Her campaign to re-legitimize reefer madness lost. And so it came to a head in 2015. There were 3 members of Congress, Dana Rohrabacher, Sam Farr, and Tom Hinchey, had repeatedly run a bill to stop the spending of federal money in states that had the agency that I had been constructing in various states with ballot initiatives. It provided a reason for the state to break off from the federal government and tell the feds to go jump in the lake. So that bill kept running and running and running. Well, I saw it as a way to stop this war of Hague running around and using dispensaries and cultivation facilities as her personal ATM. She seized almost $1 billion in 7 or 8 years from cannabis operators. And so I figured the best way to stop her doing that was to cut off her money from Congress. Well, her money got cut off on July 27, 2015. Hinchey Farr Rohrabacher turned into an amendment to the 2016 budget, and it was able to go in the budget because it was a financial item, even though it stops money instead of spends it. And so when Obama signed it, July 27th, she came unglued. Well, I was indicted August 11th. She resigned from office August 15th. And I believe it was because she was so embarrassed and knew that she would be revealed as such a, revengeful, crazy person who was using the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office as her own personal, vengeful program. And the fact that she had historically come out of representing the pharmaceutical industry. It was always my guess, my deduction that her anger and fury towards medical marijuana was based in her career-long relationship with the pharmaceutical industry, because they didn't want cannabis.
Well, that's not much of a stretch, because alcohol and marijuana, you would have thought it would be alcohol to come down on it, but next best thing is the big farms who have side effects. It's just that simple. Their product always has negative side effects, and that marijuana doesn't is checkmate, and they're just fighting an uphill battle, but they got the bucks to do so. And,
And they lost their biggest warrior when she resigned. So that's what the chronological reasoning is behind, anybody with half a brain can see that process. Her money gets cut off July 27th. I'm blamed for it because UFCW really pushed the amendment, and we got the entire AFL-CIO behind us in Congress. That amendment had run as a bill for 9 years in a row before we got involved. And then suddenly the first year on the Hill, with me and other union people kicking Congress members' doors in and saying, we gotta vote for this. And then it passed, but passed as an amendment, which is a technical process that would take a long time to explain. But it passed, and so...
Which Congress people greased the way for you, and which ones held you back?
You couldn't put it in individuals. Well, let's put it this way. At some point, Speaker Pelosi was a speaker at the time, and she's a Congress member from San Francisco and a dear old friend. She's also the chair of the Progressive Caucus in Congress and was the unspoken head of the unofficial Cannabis Caucus in Congress, which was her and Jared Polis and Jared Huffman, and that list just goes on. And there's Sam Farr, there's Tom Hinchey.
Does it cross party lines?
Well, it didn't until Hinchey Farr, and we actually, I think the vote count before we got involved always ended up with 156 yays and 270 some nays, whatever 535 adds up to. And that year, as a bill, it got 196, which was pretty much the Democratic Party line plus about 12. We pulled in 12 Republicans, which, Rand Paul was involved, and even though he's a senator, who's the guy that looks like a turtle? He's now the
McConnell.
Yeah, McConnell. Mitch McConnell was involved because I went to Kentucky and brought them a bill, brought a state senator there a bill for hemp farming. And so McConnell grabbed that and ran with it because it's a farming state. And then all the farmers got on board. And so suddenly we had lots of Republican, conservative farmer support and their senators and congressmen. So we turned it into an economic issue instead of a drug issue. That was always the key to...
Let me ask you, Dan, what do you make of Vice President Pence's threat to California that he's going to enforce some federal stuff and come down on the buyers, the consumers, which leads us to your warning? So,
well, I think the planet that Mike Pence is from, I'm sure they take him seriously on whatever planet that is.
Well, the planet happens to be vice president, who could very easily, given the mental state of the orange fucktard, and that's the best way of saying it, he could be president tomorrow. So I'm not taking his ideology seriously, because no one with half a brain can do that. But his power is another thing. So,
his only power.
How about his mindset? How do you address his mindset? What do you think he has support?
He's the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, and he can also control the agenda of the Senate if the majority leader doesn't show up to run the agenda. So that's really the only power he has. He's too busy running around the country hoping somebody does break open the orange-faced watermelon to really be effective. And he's so I think that the one that we really have to worry about that's effective and is in a position that runs a department, as Department of Justice head, What's that wingnut's name? I can't remember now. The guy that looks like a
McConnell again?
No. The Department of Justice, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah, so Sessions is the one. Now, what people don't realize about Sessions is that this guy owns tens of thousands of stock certificates in private prisons. And we can watch his self-serving process just by looking at the headlines. He becomes Attorney General, and suddenly prison stock prices go back through the roof after Obama has issued an executive order to shut down the private prisons. Then he's in there long enough to where, the weirdos in there that want to impress him because he's the boss now, they come and they tell him, hey, look, if we start locking up these marijuana people, it's federal crime, so they go to federal prisons, your federal prisons that you own, Mr. Attorney General. We can fill up the prisons again. Your stock goes back up. And, oh, by the way, if you tell your U.S. attorneys to seek maximum penalties, well, then we have lifelong slaves. Then you've got somebody with a 40-year federal sentence, and they are now owned by the U.S. government, and their slave labor is sold at $1 an hour to places like Unicor, Elon Musk, and other, gazillionaires that are, just out there raping
right.
the American people. So, I mean, you can literally see the process if you understand that process. And so he comes out and says, okay, I want all my U.S. attorneys to crack down on drugs. And then he says, I want you to start enforcing federal marijuana laws in all the states. Well, he didn't know about Hinchy Farr Rohrabacher. He didn't know about the amendment. And so he literally makes an ass of himself in front of God and everybody, gets up and gives a speech at the DOJ with this big DOJ emblem behind him and says, I want my U.S. attorneys to start enforcing marijuana laws. Well, they all called him up and said, we can't. There's something called the Hinchy Farr Rohrabacher Amendment in the budget. And so he circles back around and talks to his people and then comes back and says, okay, well, I just want you to enforce on the legal marijuana stuff, because Hinchy Farr Rohrabacher only covers medical, doesn't protect legal. So, I mean, that guy's a wingnut because he showed that he doesn't mind being foolish, saying stupid things in front of cameras, and creating policy in the Justice Department that is literally designed, obnoxiously designed to fill up his private prisons and pump up his prison stock. And
has he been outed on this? Has any journalist come out in Washington Post, Times, anybody written about that?
And here's the problem. The American voter, all they want to see is a TV commercial that makes them feel good for a minute. There's got to be a flag waving and a jet dropping a bomb, or, starving kids. The American voters got a 30-second attention span. We've trained them for 6 decades to watch 30-second TV spots. And then you form your opinion on what's on TV. So, yeah, it's been in the news, it's been in the headlines, it's been on CNN, it's been everywhere. And then it gets dropped the next morning when the industrial military complex comes out with a TV ad saying that the Syrians are invading the U.S. through airport taco trucks.
Orders of this, that, and the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the American people
this is very confusing, and but what I'd like to know as a consumer, I responded this morning when I saw this with great horror. And would you explain what we, the consumer in California, with the legalization of marijuana, have to put up with one particular club that you mentioned this morning in an article.
Yeah, so we're talking about Bloom Dispensaries, which is operated, maintained by Martin Kaufman, who also runs a company called Core Security. And Salwa Ibrahim, who used to be Richard Lee's assistant back in the Oaksterdam days and Prop 19 days. And Martin Kaufman is an informant for the FBI. And he was granted immunity. He was told he wouldn't be prosecuted for his crimes, his, federal crimes, financial crimes by the FBI. The FBI told him they wouldn't prosecute him. And I've seen the paperwork. I can't release it because there's a gag order on that. Actually, I think it does exist in the public record. So Kaufman is an immunized informant for the FBI. And his wife sits right there and drives the car while he's working for the FBI. I haven't seen any paperwork where she's actually making commissions and reports. And so Bloom Dispensaries is owned by the TerraTech Corporation, and I'll spell that for you. It's capital T-E-R, space, capital T-E-C, space, C-O-R-P. TerraTech Corp. It's a publicly traded stock corporation, and that is the CEO of that is a guy named Derek Peterson. Peterson is also known as Derek Apatizano, depending on which criminal case, bankruptcy, fraud case you look him up under, or the cases that never got filed against him, because he's a long time, since 2004, paid an immunized informant for the FBI, who's granted something called an otherwise illegal activity license. And they sent him here to operate this publicly traded stock corporation. They sent him to Oakland, to the Oaksterdam Movement, specifically to infiltrate it. And so they prop him up. They prop up him and TerraTech, their other company, Meta Farms, which is a Nevada corporation, and owns the Nevada Blooms, Bloom in Reno and the Bloom in Las Vegas. And these people work for the FBI. Peterson's worked for them for over 10 years, regularly. Meets with them once a week, reports everything he sees, turns over the audio and video of what happens in their dispensaries, turns over the vendor lists of who they do business with, and makes available any, and that's all, aside from being against the law up until January 1st, it's all a violation of HIPAA, which is the federal law that says you got to protect medical records. So these people are ongoing informants for the FBI. Kaufman and Ibrahim are millionaires; they don't need to get paid, but they're all propped up and kept in business by the FBI. Now, here's the really thing that people got to understand. These people don't have a choice. When the FBI says you go after them, if it's their mother, if it's their best friend, if it's their kid, they've got to go after them because they live under an agreement with the feds that says that they're informants. So
now, as a consumer, how could Johnny Lunchbucket be hurt by this?
Well, here's the thing. The feds are after money, and they're after information, and they're after new informants. So you just may be Johnny Lunchbucket, but you may be friends with somebody who has considerable assets that the federal government decides they want to seize. And somebody that's not doing anything wrong, like myself. Well, that's not completely true. But somebody who they figure is going to be good headlines, so they get you, Johnny Lunchbucket. They set you up. These rats that work for them set you up. They fabricate cases against you. They tape your conversations. They get you to say casual things in conversations that boil down to a federal crime. And then they come arrest you, Johnny Lunchbucket, and tell you, Johnny, we're the FBI. Here's our badge. We're going to give you 20 years. You've seen this on TV your entire life. We showed you the badge. We told you 20 years. Now you go to work for us. And most people fall for that. Most people, are put in a position where they'll lose their entire lives. I'm going to prison. I got to tell you, I've worked hard all my life. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a sociopath. I'm not somebody who sat around and lined his own pockets for my own benefit. I'm somebody who said, I'm gonna begin the end of cannabis prohibition, and did what I had to do. But, trust me, there was no pockets that were lined, and there was nobody sitting around smoking crack and smoking cigars and ordering, ridiculous stuff. So Johnny Lunchbucket, you go there and your whole life is in jeopardy because you're on tape. You're purchasing marijuana. Maybe they pull you over afterwards. You got something else going on too. I don't know. Just the fact that you're there.
Well, would the other dispensaries fall? This is something you know about. You've had experience with these people, but there are X number of dispensaries out there. Would others be subject to the same kind of FBI infiltration?
Well, I got to tell you, Ralph, I know everybody in the Oakland cannabis industry that's in the commercial part of it. And there isn't anybody else in the Oakland cannabis industry or the old, what we call the cannabis movement or the Oaksterdam movement that is working for the feds. That is in a position to where they have to work for the feds because they got caught doing something and they enter into an agreement. Feds say, here, we'll give you a break. We won't prosecute you, but here's your contract. You have to deliver your wife, your mother, your child, your best friend if we send you after them. And if we feel like you haven't done your job, if you haven't lied, cheated, been the worst scoundrel possible to trick anybody into committing a crime so they could go after them, then that contract says that they go down. They've already pled guilty. They've already been sentenced. And that sentence is suspended during the time that they work for the feds. So trust me when I tell you, people tell me, oh, well, I know so-and-so, and he's my buddy. Yeah, well, your buddy is in a contract where if he doesn't get you, he's going to prison and losing everything he's got because he's already pled guilty. So, and those contracts don't go away. Those people end up working for him forever. So people got assigned to me first and probably got fooled into thinking that was the only thing they'd have to do. And now they live under this scoundrelous system, this federal fucking justice destruction system that we call the federal court system and the Department of Justice. And they have to live under that for the rest of their lives. So when you think you're going to these places and you think these people are going to be nice to you, you better hope some Fed hasn't decided that they either want your property, your grandma's jewelry, your hot rod car in the driveway, your pension. They'll come after you for your pension. They're driven by money and headlines is what the feds are after. They don't even want to prosecute you because it's work. And then they have to go to court. And it's like, oh, man, I got to do some work. I'd rather just have you bend and sign this agreement so I own you forever so that you are the slave to this agency forever.
So in essence, you're pleading guilty to whatever they trump up.
And that's the thing I want people to understand about me. I committed a crime. Okay? It wasn't this horrible pocket lining thing. I insisted that my lawyer, who owed me money, who owed my investigations firm money for a decade, wouldn't pay me. And when I went to work for the International Union, I took a $200,000 a year pay cut to go get in a position to help begin the end of prohibition because I had hoped the International Union would put the resources in, which they didn't. when I got into that position, I insisted my lawyer pay me. Well, my lawyer eventually became an industry lawyer because I was telling people, this guy helped me design this agency policy issue. He's the best person to represent you. As soon as he became a lawyer for Bloom or Kaufman, he was an industry lawyer. So then the payments he was paying to me as a repayment of money he had owed me for a decade became an illegal payment. Because one penny that went from his hand to mine as a union official was illegal. Now, I could have been smarter. I should have been smarter, and I should have had him put the money in an escrow and then got the credit line from the escrow, which is now I find out would have been the appropriate way to do that. But frankly, I didn't think about it, Ralph. I thought about freeing people that have been locked up for life over a plant. And I thought about Parkinson's patients who could actually sit down for 20 minutes and grasp their own body instead of shaking like a leaf and have a conversation for 20 minutes because they could smoke a joint. Or kids with neurologically based diseases like epilepsy and Tourette syndrome and Dravet syndrome who could, for the first time, stop shaking enough to hug their parents. That's what I was thinking.
Hey, or podcasters with floating anxiety. How about that?
Frankly,
that's how I got my card. That's how I got my medical card. And, we could talk about that. Some states legalize marijuana for medical purposes, but you basically have to have polio to get it. California is very lax. That's changing with the legalization of recreational marijuana. You're going to have to go to a legitimate doctor who gives you an exam and a recommendation. So on some levels, things are really changing, some for the better, some for the worse. You gave us Bloom as an example in the East Bay area, where we're both from, or I'm from New York, but living out here for all these years.
By the way, Bloom is at 565 Grand Avenue in Oakland.
Okay, now that's some place to keep away from, and that's right off Broadway. I've been there once or twice over the years. What would be a place that you'd recommend? Johnny Lunchbuckets.
I strongly recommend that people go to a good, community-driven place of conscious, a union place, members of UFCW. And right now, I'm not real happy with UFCW, I got to tell you. But they are union members, and it's Magnolia in Oakland. And Magnolia is a nice place. It's run by Debbie Goldsberry, who is a hero. She's the Benjamin Franklin-ette of the cannabis movement, and she is the Steve Jobs. She's the new Steve Jobs of the cannabis industry. And Magnolia is run by people who participate in an apprenticeship program. They're being certificated. They have single earner jobs where one parent can work there and support the family, and the other parent is free to stay home and take care of the kids or go to work. And it's a place of conscience. And I'll tell you what, they're not going to be gouging you for $75 eighths or whatever, like they do with other places. And they're not going to have these machines that have these $20 packages of some inferior caca that you take home and do whatever you do with it. I mean, it's a good place. It's a strong community place.
Great recommendation. I appreciate that. And again, stay away from Bloom and go to Magnolia if you're in the Bay Area. And Dan, I am so appreciative. I am better educated for it every time we speak.
Ralph, I am so grateful for the friendship and loyalty that you've extended me over the years. the way I see it, you and I started together. And, as long as I'm here,
well, I feel the same way about you. Your loyalty to me, you never once big leagued me, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate Pam's friendship. It's just nice that we could do this. I wish things would have turned out a little differently. I had a thought between the time we spoke this morning and until we got on the air. Horrible thought. I hope you putting your thoughts out there won't someday affect your parole.
Well, I got to tell you, Ralph, I'm not going to not say something. I mean, clearly I don't think too clearly when it comes to my own self. And I'm that guy that, I have a flame that burns in my heart. And it's a forest fire when it comes to certain topics. And, I'm sure I'll be screwed if I end up in front of that judge again. Because I think he knows exactly what I think about him and his buddies that are the prosecutors,
and the horse that brung him, the boat he came in on. How about that? Does that explains it?
I got to say something for the judge. I mean, this is a judge that allowed my attorney, my family lawyer, who had been representing me and my family in all kinds of stuff across the board for almost 15 years. And this judge allowed him to be a paid witness for the FBI, for the prosecutors. He allowed him to be a witness against me. I never heard a word from him that questioned any of the outlandish lies and cartoons that my former lawyer, Mark Trebeek, levied on me during the case on behalf of the government and the FBI. This guy was my lawyer, and this judge allowed our attorney-client privilege to be disregarded and allowed him to serve as a witness for the government. And I was astonished that he never even blinked his eyes, that a lawyer would be sitting and testifying against his client for a deal that he cut for himself. Ralph, the 15 counts that I got in that indictment, the little bit that I accept responsibility for, and I got to tell you, I didn't accept responsibility for anything I didn't do. And I wasn't going to accept responsibility for anything that I didn't do. And I had to search to find things that I could accept responsibility for. And I stand by that. They charged me with conspiracy for money laundering. Well, the omission that I omitted in that was months later, my lawyer told me in a attorney-client conversation that he had structured cash from Kaufman, which was an investment, not a loan. The big lie that the government told that this was some kind of loan. When he told me that he had structured the money into his bank account, he's the lawyer supposed to tell me what's legal and what's not. And when I didn't pick up the phone and turn him into the FBI, I became a conspirator. Although the court records show, it says that I somehow orchestrated him taking money from Kaufman and putting it in the bank. And I got to tell you, I hardly knew what their deal was. All I knew was that an investment was being made in a commercial development on my family's property. So when I didn't pick up the phone and turn him in, I became a conspirator and money launderer. When I took a dime from him, that was a repayment of a loan of money that he had owed me for over a decade. Those payments became illegal payments. And so I have to accept responsibility for that. I committed a crime. I accept responsibility. I'm going to now embark on a journey to federal prison, and I'm going to go do my time, and I'm going to come home,
And you're going to keep your head up.
I'm going to keep my head is up, my chin is up, my chest is up.
Beautiful, Dan. You be well, and just take care of yourself. That's the best thing I can tell you. Be good to yourself.
Thanks, Ralph. Hey,
all right, my friend.
Take care of our movement, huh? Take care of our industry.
We'll do the best. I'll do the best I possibly can. That's the good news and the bad news wrapped into one statement. Thank you, Dan. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The show is Canna Chat, in the zone. I am Ralph Tyko. They call me Zig. I am kind of the weak link of it all. Adios, everybody. See you next time, Dan.
Thank you, Ralph. See you soon.